Hello Zahir, it's Ryan from 2minutetennis.net. Thank you so much for sending me a video of your serve. I'm super excited to help you. Let's check out the footage, then I'll come back here and I'll show you everything I want you to change.
So Zahir, let's watch your serve at full speed a few times to give the viewers a chance to analyze it themselves, and then we'll go through it. Now you know it's not so easy when somebody sends you a video of them serving and you've got to analyze it and then send it back to them or make a video on it showing them what they can do to improve, right? It's not so easy. So the first thing we got to talk about, Zahir, is your grip. I got you side by side here with Raonic, and you know, one of the things that I recommend to players is they have their racket open slightly when they begin. Now, Raonic is the extreme of this, and I'll show you when I'm back in front of the camera here. But your racket is closed at the beginning of your serve, meaning your racket is tilted like this with your strings facing down, where Raonic has the strings open. Now, this is an extreme of what I want you to have. I actually want you to have your racket angled like this with your strings up. So I'm going to show you this when I'm back in front of the camera again, but that's going to promote using the proper grip, because right now you do not have the correct grip. Let me show you what grip you've got at the moment. Now, Zahir, the two spots we have to know about first are the base knuckle of the index finger and the heel pad. And those two spots should be going on panel number 2. Panel number 2 is the top right for a right-hander. Currently, you have those two spots in between panels 2 and 3. So this is panel 2, this is panel 3. Those are also called bevels. So you have those two spots in between. Now you might think, oh, that's close, right? But the difference between here and where you currently are is 22.5 degrees. Since the racket around is 360 degrees, each panel is 45 degrees different than the next panel, 45 times 8, 360. You are a half a bevel off, so you're 22.5 degrees off, and that's going to explain why your strings are facing slightly down, and I want them to face slightly up. So the grip that you currently are using is not the grip that you're going to want to use, so let's really make sure you've got the base knuckle of your index finger and your heel pad on panel number 2. Now, Zahir, we've talked about the grip. Now let's discuss knee bend. When you release the ball out of your hand, there's no knee bend, and we can tell because your head stays at the same height. So if I just put that line there at the top of your head, watch, you release the ball and you don't move from that line. Watch Raonic. As the ball comes out of his hand, if I draw a line at the top of his head, look how he's bending down below that line. Notice where your racket is. Your racket is above the yellow line, but your head is still at the yellow line. When I get his racket above the yellow line, look how much lower his head is. That is because he is bending his knees. As the ball comes out of his hands, he's beginning the knee bend. So I really want you to improve the timing and really the use of your legs, where the moment the ball comes out of your hand, and you're going to have to film yourself, and that's why I'm making this video, so you can learn what to look for. But as the ball comes out of your hand, that is when your body should sink down. Just like Raonic. You watch the pros. You look at Isner and you look at Federer. This is just what the pros do. The ball comes out of their hand, they begin bending their knees. I want you to toss and begin bending your knees at this point as well. Now, this is when we need to talk about your racket position. Because of your grip, you'll notice that your strings then point up. Your racket travels up over your hand, when really we want the racket to travel in over your head like you're knocking off a birthday hat. If you notice Raonic's racket, because of his grip, and you know, here he had his strings and his wrist position very exaggerated. You can see the wrist is way curled over. His strings are pointing up a lot, more than what I'll suggest to you. But that's all fixed at this point. But you can notice if he were to look up, and his racket was a mirror, he could see himself in the mirror because his strings are pointing down. That's what I want you to have. I want you to move the racket in over your head with the strings pointing down. You can see you bring the racket over your hand and then your strings point up. That's not going to create the fastest loop that you can use in order to hit your best serves. And I'm talking about racket speed that's going to make the ball travel fast, but then it's also going to make sure that you can put enough spin on the ball that you can curve it or hit a kick serve. So have your strings pointing down at this point. I think it's going to make an enormous difference in your racket speed. Now, this is also when you'll see Raonic begin going up. You know, we talked about when Raonic was bending his knees. Knee bend basically occurs between, and there are exceptions, of course, but on the Pro Tour, knee bend begins when the ball leaves the hand, and the knee bend is done when the racket gets to, knock off the birthday head or in that trophy position. So the knee bend happens between the release of the ball and then when the racket gets to the trophy position. At this point here, this is when we're going to see Raonic's head go up. So there's the line at, where his head is currently. And notice now his head begins exploding up. And when that coincides, when the head is going up and that coincides with the racket dropping, it really helps the shoulder stretch. Look how high he's going up. It's amazing. Let me draw that line again. That's where his head is now. And then look where his head is when he contacts the ball. It's amazing how up he went. I mean, he went up so much. You'll notice you have very little of that. We talked about how when you released the ball, your head didn't go up. But even here, this is really the lowest point your head is. And then when you contact the ball, I don't know, I guess we could draw a line, that much. There's very little upward movement of your body. And that just means we're not getting a shoulder stretch. That's going to help enlarge the circle and really accelerate the racket around up to contact. So I want you to work on, as we talked about, releasing the ball, bringing the racket in, and that's when your body begins dropping, bringing the racket in over your head with your strings pointing down. But at this point right here, the knee bend should be done. And just like Raonic, his knee bend is done now when he's, looking in the mirror and the racket's in over his head in the trophy position, knocking off the birthday hat. Now look at his head. His head is going up. So it isn't important that we just bend the knees at the right time. We need to explode up at the right time. Now you know what to look for and you know kind of how to be your own coach. Really the last idea here we're going to talk about is going to be where your chest is facing. Let's look at Raonic when he is contacting the ball. You'll notice his chest is facing off to the right. His left hip is farther from the camera than his right hip. His left shoulder is farther from the camera than his right shoulder. And you can actually see his left hand in that yellow circle. That's his left hand because his left hand and left arm is tucking in against his body. He's tucking this tossing arm in against his body. That's actually slowing down his body's rotation. You want to slow down the body's rotation as a way to accelerate the racket through contact. I want you to notice as you're hitting, and then I'm going to show you the finish here in a second. Watch your left arm, how it's visible, and your left hand is visible here as you're about to hit the ball. I want your chest to stay so far to the right that we can actually see your left hand on the right side of your body. Federer does the exact same thing. By keeping the tossing arm tucked in against the body, it will slow your body's rotation down. Now, there's a very important way of doing this. You'll see Raonic. His tossing arm is going to drop down in front of him, then tuck in against his body. He does not tuck it immediately against his body. Watch his tossing arm. It drops down in front of him, then tucks in against his body. This is really, really important. You want the tossing arm to drop down in front of you, then tuck back in against the body. It drops down in front of him, then tucks in against the body. And you can see, and this is actually what I teach, I tell people that their left hand should smell like their right armpit because it'll be right there. Again, you can see your left hand is down on your left side. So that just promotes you, continuing to spin. Spinning while you're hitting the serve does not help accelerate the racket. it's called a reactive brake. We actually want to slow the body's rotation down. By slowing the body's rotation down, that's what's going to accelerate the racket and help us hit a lot faster. And then if we look at his finish, when he's done, his foot has hit the ground. You can see from his left hip to his right hip are the same distance to the camera. And we are looking directly at the sole of his foot. And there is, not a lot of space between his legs. If we look at when you hit the ground, there's a lot of space between your legs. You can see we're looking at the side of your foot, and your body is really facing off to the left. In fact, when you're done, watch how you cross over with your right foot. Your right foot crosses over because your body has spun so much. I don't want you, and you can see where Raonic's foot is. Raonic's foot is going forward. He's completely on balance. It's going forward from where it is right now, where you're falling over, and you can see right here your legs are crossed. This is your left leg. This is your right leg, where at no point can I show you Raonic's legs crossed because his right leg is going forward because he wasn't falling off to the left as he was striking the ball. So let me go in front of the camera right now, and we're going to work on the grip, we're going to work on knee bend, the position of the racket, when you should be exploding up with your body, tucking that left arm, and then the proper positioning of your body when you're done.
So first I want to mention that video of Milos Raonic was courtesy of Zen Rackets on Instagram. I've got their link in the description below. I use their account all the time for great video footage. Thanks guys. Please follow them. Their Instagram account is awesome. So Zahir, the first thing was your grip. You've got a very common mistake with the grip is you feel like you've got a continental, but it's not quite there. And you'll notice that the racket face changes based on the grip I use. So instead of just thinking, oh, I got to change the way I'm holding the racket, what I actually want you to do is change your racket position. And if you're a coach and you're helping students transition from a forehand grip to a continental grip, this is a great tip to give them because it promotes using the proper grip. Many recreational players try to change to a continental and it feels weird. You can see their shoulder kind of pinch because they're not changing their racket position. They're only changing their arm position. You don't even have to change your hand position. Change the racket. Turn the racket and have it start slightly open. So you'll notice instead of being closed, you can be open and my hand is not even moving. I'm just turning the way my racket is positioned. So start the serve and have your racket slightly open. That'll promote using the proper grip and then you can do a lot more with your serve with that continental. The second thing, when you release the ball, you should begin bending your knees. Knee bend occurs between the release. Typically, there are of course exceptions on the pro tour and both men and women, amateur players, of course there are exceptions, but we got to start with a rule to understand the exceptions. So here's the rule. The knee bend begins as the ball releases out of your hand, and the knee bend is done when the racket gets above your head. You look at Dimitrov, he's different. He begins his leg drive and going up before he hits the birthday hat. Riley Opelka, the same thing. But you look at Roger Federer, you look at Milos Raonic, they get their racket to the birthday hat. They get the racket to the trophy position when their body begins going up. So Zahir, I want you to practice when you release the ball, that's when your knees bend. Bend your knees more than you think you should. And then when you get the racket in above your head, that's when your body should be exploding up. Now, when you do that, it's going to be really important, Zahir, that you practice having the racket strings face down rather than facing up. Watch my racket as it travels over my hand, and now watch how it travels to the inside of my hand. The proper motion is going to be this way, not this way. We want the racket to turn almost like it's a helicopter blade going in around your hand, coming in and around the hand, not going up and over your hand. So we want to practice the strings pointing down. An easy way to do this, let me grab a tennis ball, an easy way to do this is to place a ball in the throat of the racket to practice this and practice bringing the racket in over the head without letting the ball fall out. You're so used to a slightly different grip and the racket traveling open, where the racket travels over itself rather than in to the inside of your hand. Have the racket, or practice bringing the racket in around your hand. And an easy way to practice that is just to have the ball in the throat of the racket. Now, as you go up to contact, we want this left arm to drop, but then tuck in against the body. You'll notice Milos and Federer is going to be no different. When you watch them from the back, they drop their tossing arm down in front of them, but then they bring it against their body. And as they're making contact, sorry, I can't reach super high in the basement here. It's pouring down rain outside, otherwise I'd make a video outdoors. But you can see their tossing arm here, where yours was here. And this is a reactive break. We want that tossing arm to drop down in front. And what I teach players is drop the tossing arm down, pointing towards your opponent, then bring it in against the body. So it's like this. You're going to go up. The tossing arm, once you hit the birthday hat, that's when the tossing arm drops, and it's also when the body starts going up. Those three things all happen at the same time. Racket hits the birthday hat, body begins going up, and the left arm, or the tossing arm, begins dropping. But you don't want to drop it like this. We don't want the tossing arm to just pull in against the body. That's not going to be a reactive break. We want that tossing arm to reach out if I'm serving this way. We want that tossing arm to reach out toward the opponent, then tuck in against the body. That slows the body's rotation down and accelerates the racket. And that's an easy way to pick up a few miles per hour without having to change much about your serve. And then the last thing was when you were done, you were facing way over to the left, and you could see all this space between your legs, where Raonic, the bottom of his shoe, was pointing directly toward the camera. You were so off balance that you were falling over to the left, where his right foot went forward and then he was in the ready position. So Zahir, thank you so much for sending me this video of your serve. I would love to see, we got the before, I would love to see the after and maybe even highlight you in a future video coming up soon. I did that recently for a gentleman David, and his serve completely transformed in 30 days. And I highlighted it here on YouTube in one of the videos. So it was really fun to do. So if you are watching this and you would like me to help you with your technique, could be any stroke, just send me an email, ryan@2minutetennis.net, and just include some of the things that you're working on with your serve and maybe some of the frustrations, and maybe I'll choose you for an upcoming video. So Zahir, thank you so much. If you work on these ideas, there's no doubt you're going to gain confidence, win more matches, and play much better tennis. This is Ryan Reedy from 2minutetennis.net. Zahir, you got this.